Alright fellas, well that wasn't a surprise. Canelo and Jaime Munguia just faced off. As everyone was expecting, Canelo pulled off the win. Now I think it was a good win, but I think there's a lot to unpack here and talk about. Also, I think we absolutely need to look towards the future. What's potentially next for Canelo? What's the most realistic next move he might take? But let's get right into it. So prior to the fight, I kind of talked about in my last video, most people saw Munguia as a perfect style matchup for Canelo to show off and dominate. The lead up to the fight wasn't really anything unexpected, except for Oscar De La Hoya going off, and I don't think anybody expected him to really be talking as much as he was. But, is it really a surprise? Not really. Obviously it was some sort of attempt to rattle Canelo, but it just didn't work. Now in the fight, I think we saw the best version of Jaime Munguia that we've ever seen. Munguia brought it, and he had improved significantly after his bout with John Ryder. Munguia is now obviously working with Freddie Roach and Wildcard Boxing Gym, and this has been a massively positive decision for him. Throughout the fight, he looked more defensively sound than he has in his previous fights. He was using the jab well for a few rounds, managed to unload a little bit, managed to survive the 12, which is a huge credit to him. Although he struggled in a few areas. Using the jab similar to Bivol and keeping a guard up worked well, until his old habits crept in and he just forgot to raise his guard. Munguia at times was boxing and looked like he suddenly remembered he had to have his hands up. He went back to his old instincts, and it showed that this was all fairly new to him, his new defensive style. But alongside this, many of his punches weren't landing and were just landing on Canelo's guard. Once he would finish his combinations, his hands would be lowered, and Canelo saw this and took advantage of it, which is what put Munguia down in the 4th round. Yet Munguia did land some solid combinations with a good few of them getting through. But let's talk about Canelo. This was a really solid performance by him, going the full 12, dominant performance, and dropping Munguia for the first time in Munguia's career. He seemed to have his number, and after a few rounds he knew what to do. He knew he could win the fight almost solely based around counterpunching, and did so pretty effectively. He controlled the pace, and as he said, he could see most of Munguia's punches coming, and that's what enabled him to counter so effectively. What surprised me was Canelo staying and training with Munguia round after round. He showed Munguia from the beginning that he had no respect for his power. On top of this, remained standing in his corner at the end of each round. Now I understand in most camps, in sparring rounds, the fighters ain't sitting down. Yet I think Canelo in this fight might have been using it as a mental edge over Munguia, being like, your shots aren't hurting me. Or he just wasn't that tired and standing up enabled him to breathe better. In a surprising ending, unlike a lot of recent boxing matches, I think the scorecards were dead on correct. The judges, in my opinion, got it perfectly correct. But now, I just want to talk about what's in the future for Canelo. In the post-fight interview, I was really surprised when they brought up only one fighter, and that one fighter being David Benavidez. Now, this is the fight that everyone wants and all the fans are talking about. Canelo seemed to basically say, well, if the money is right, it will happen. And in his post-fight press conference, he said, 200 million. Do I think that this fight is a possibility? Well, kinda. Yeah, it's a possibility, but Benavidez is moving up to light heavyweight. The reason for this? 1, he hasn't been able to get the Canelo fight, and more importantly 2, the Saudis want him to fight the winner of Bivol Benavidez. Now with this fight being cancelled and Benavidez's fight being in June, it does open the possibility for a Canelo matchup later in the year. Canelo has one fight left on his PBC contract, and everything would point towards that fight making sense. Although, I don't think the Saudis would put up the money for the fight. They have stayed away from fighters like Canelo and Tank who see themselves as the face of boxing, and maybe outpricing themselves. Most likely, I don't see Benavidez being his next fight though, but what do I think we could end up with next? Well, I think unfortunately we could see a Jermall Charlo fight. Although, let's be honest, nobody wants to see that. Jermall has somehow retained his WBC belt, but to me, it would just be another Canelo washout, and probably the least attractive fight that we could potentially see. I don't see the possibility of a Terrence Crawford fight on the horizon at all, because I see it most likely being lined up with the winner of Tszyu vs Ortiz, and I think Crawford and Canelo would price themselves out of a potential fight. But probably the most realistic option for Canelo's next fight is Edgar Berlanga. Now I see him basically as Munguia 2.0. He hasn't fought anyone major, he's built up an undefeated record, and is now setting himself for a massive payday. Do I think Berlanga has a chance to beat Canelo? No, not really. But would I prefer this over the Jermall fight? Yeah. It might be a bit harder to make with Eddie Hearn promoting him, but as we've seen with promoters this year, they're more than happy to cross promote, so I think this is probably the most likely fight to happen next. I think we won't see Canelo back again until at least the end of the year. Canelo is obviously at the tail end of his career and will be looking for fights to solidify his legacy, yet without taking too much risk. I don't think he'll have a run at light heavyweight again unless he had a golden opportunity, but I think there'll be a good few fights left. For Munguia, I know post-fight they've been comparing his loss to Canelo's loss against Floyd, but I don't think it's like that at all. Do I think Munguia has the ability to have a career like Canelo's? No. Will he be world champion again? I think probably. I don't think Golden Boy are dumb. They will set him on a correct path moving forwards and will set him up for a world title and more massive matches. Either being against current stars like Jermall Charlo or the future stars of the 168 division, or even a run at light heavyweight once Bivol and Benavidez are out of the picture. But I guess only time will tell. But just quickly, if you've never heard of me, my name is Cloister and I make boxing and fight related content, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear what you thought about the fight and what's next for Canelo down below. But anyway, thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.